Bruce Lee, unbeknownst to many people, is a philosopher. And yes, a martial artist. And yes, fought against racism. And yes, opened the world to kung fu and bucked the system, right? But he's really a philosopher. And he's constantly thinking, was constantly thinking. I think the world would be an incredibly different place if he was alive today because his words were so powerful.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Sustainable Supply Chain Podcast. My name is Tom Raftery, and with me on the show today, I have my special guest, Seth. Seth, welcome to the podcast. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Great to be here. Thank you for having me. My name is Seth Weisberg. I'm the CEO of ABCO Systems. And like I said, happy to be here. I think this is a great podcast with a great message.
Oh, thank you, Seth. Seth, tell me a little bit about ABCO Systems for people who might not be aware.
We're a full service systems integrator. We do everything from storage to automation. Product movement really is our specialty, but we absolutely love doing storage. It's where our roots come from. We also have a great internal software and hardware that we developed that we put together. Actually, in fact, we've acquired this wonderful company called FastFetch, where we do a lot of pick-to-light systems. And that's what's relevant for us today are in terms of sustainability our IntelliPack solution. So full service systems integrator that pretty much does everything inside the four walls of a distribution center.
Okay. And you're the founder of ABCO Systems. So tell me a little bit about the origin story. What made you decide to set up the company?
Okay, well that's an interesting story. And yes, I'm the founder. However, it's I'm third generation, and it evolved just like anything else does through the generations, through the years. My grandfather did a lot of steel shelving and a lot of cutting tables when fabrics and dresses and whatnot were made here in the US, more specifically, even in the garment district in New York City. My
Mm.
father turned it into garment on hanger. It was an industry, to be honest with you, that I never wanted to be in. I worked at PricewaterhouseCoopers for 6 years. My father had his 5th heart attack in 2003, said he needed
Ooh.
some help, and I came in to try and help revive the business. Because while my father did a really outstanding job over the years of sustaining the business and keeping it going, QH was dying. It was going away, and garment on hanger, for the people that aren't familiar with that, it's the rod in your closet that you literally hang your clothes on.
Mhm.
We built those and continue to in the thousands upon hundreds of thousands of feet. But as shipping lanes changed, as technology changed, garment on hanger just kind of went away, and boxes and packaging really evolved and was the new way of doing things, or rather took over. In any case, when I came in and when I decided to stay long term, we really changed the business and went from garment on hanger and then started doing that much more flat pack, that much more storage. Then we really went into mezzanines and utilizing the cube, and then we started doing automation, and now we're into everything, including robotics, pick to light, put to light systems, and of course, packaging software.
Okay. And what would you say, Seth, has surprised you most on your journey from PwC to where you are today?
Uh, I mean, gosh, that's a really good question. But the thing that surprised me most, probably the nature of how logistics has come to light, because when I got into it, it was very much a niche.
Mm.
20 something years ago, when you would say that you worked in logistics or in distribution, or you installed pallet rack or government hanger, people would have no idea what you were talking about. Today, if you're watching CNBC or any kind of financial news or anything like that, it's every third commercial. They're showing it inside of a distribution center. Amazon really did, of course, change the culture behind
Mm.
distribution, but the biggest surprise to me is how much it is relevant today and how much people realize that truckers, shippers, flights, it really runs the economy. And it's come to light in so many different ways, but everywhere you turn today, it's all about distribution.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. And I mean, this is the Sustainable Supply Chain podcast. So, how do you see sustainability in the industry? How do you see it reshaping the future of warehouse operations and supply chain management, that kind of thing?
Well, there's a lot to that, right? I mean, you've got a podcast with tons and tons of guests that come on over and over, and I've seen so many of them. What I find interesting about the whole thing is there's so much to it. So where do I see it going? I mean, I was at a cold chain conference yesterday, and one of the things that I knew, but I didn't realize, I suppose, is how much electricity cold storage uses. It's
Yeah.
absolutely massive, right? So of course, solar is getting involved into it or has been for many years, right? And continues to. And then they were talking about the electric vehicles that they're using right now. So they were using diesel trucks in their facilities and on the docks because it was a Port Authority event. There's an enormous push towards electrifying that. And then you look at warehouse spacing across the country, across the world, and in Europe, which of course, I know that's where you are, less space, so automation was more prevalent earlier, but in the US, we're utilizing the space in a much different way than we once were. And now people are really using the cube that much more. People are depending that much more on automation. And of course, people are looking to reduce their carbon footprint as much as humanly possible. So you look at things like, and I definitely don't want to be too salesy as mentioned, but IntelliPack and or cubing software, cartonization for packaging, because when you think about it, retail is coming back to some degree, at least here in the US. I can't speak for across the world, but we do see a revival. E-commerce, of course, is never going away. I mean, that's
Mm.
a way of life at this stage of the game. And I think I've probably seen an Amazon truck at least 2 or 3 times a day. You know, everything with FedEx, UPS, obviously it's shipping in many different ways, but corrugated and dunnage is a huge, huge glut. There's enormous amounts of dunnage and corrugated that's being used. So there's a lot of different ways that in terms of sustainability, there's a lot of things that we can do to create a better environment. And when I say environment, I'm actually not talking about the greater environment. I'm talking about
Sure.
within supply chain and logistics.
Such as?
Well, I mean, exactly that. Go to electrification, really utilize the cube that much more, and start to really think as much as possible how to reduce our individual carbon footprint. And if we were to zoom out just a little bit,
Mhm.
if you look at the world today, there's no question that we're experiencing climate change. Now, I'm one of the people that I don't know the answer, right? There's a lot of
Mm.
people that say they know the answer on both sides, and there's a lot of smart people that have good arguments, but I don't think anybody really knows. I certainly don't. I'm a firm believer that regardless of why it's happening, it's undeniable that humans are polluting the earth and
Mhm.
going through natural resources at an unprecedented rate. And if you look at the world again from a zoom out perspective, that's not stopping. The
Yeah.
best thing that we can do in supply chain when we know that it does affect the earth and it does affect the economy so much, the best thing we can possibly do is really look at it and see what we can do and see how we can affect real change. Here's the challenge. We have to balance that with capitalism because
Yeah.
at the end
Yeah.
of the day, the consumer is going to want the cheapest product, and that's how they're gonna search, right?
Mhm.
And especially with the technology today, people can search the product, and there's so many different ways to find product, yet they can also search based on price.
Yeah.
So, who's gonna win, and how's it gonna work? And what becomes more important? What is the priority here? Is the priority to save the earth, and can we? And or is the priority to make money? Let's be real, we're a capitalist world, and no matter what way we slice it, globalization is real, and people want to make money, and businesses want to make money, and that's what drives the greater economy. So the best thing that we can do right now is try and find a good balance between making money, keeping the economy in a healthy place, keeping the world's population in a healthy place because the economy obviously feeds that.
Mhm.
But at the same time, being conscious of what we're looking at in the world around us, because there are a lot of ways, and there are a lot of things that we can do, similar to the situation with the lights, right? I I, I like an internal combustion engine. I really do. Cars are my thing, and I like to drive, and I like the sound of a motor, but I love what they're doing with environmental changes, and I like seeing that they're making attempts. Are lithium ion batteries better? Is the mining of them better? Is the disposal of them better? again, remains to be seen. And I think what's driven EVs largely, whether it be semis carrying product or whether it be people driving their cars to and from work, I think what's driven that largely is capitalism, right? But of
Mm.
course, there's a huge environmental aspect to it as well. So I just like the fact that people are thinking about it.
Yeah. 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 Off topic for a second because I'm a big EV fan myself.
Is that right?
Yeah, 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 yeah. The lithium ion thing is a distraction. They're significantly better in terms of their environmental footprint than oil and gas. Oil and gas is single use, whereas lithium ion batteries go on forever and ever and ever. They lose about 1% of capacity every 30,000 kilometers driven. So at about 300,000 kilometers, so about 200,000 mile, 220, they're at about 90% of original capacity. So they go and go and go. And as well as that, they're fully recyclable. So it's not like they're
Oh,
going to end up in landfill anywhere. So, there's no question they're significantly better. And if, as a petrol head, you like cars with, that kind of, uh,
yeah.
you should check out the Ioniq 5N.
Is that
So
right?
the Hyundai have an Ioniq, fabulous car, but they have an N version of it, which has built-in sounds and can blow anything away in a drag race. It's blown away
Sure,
Ferraris, it's blown away Maseratis, it's blown away Porsches, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Do
sure.
do a Google after this for YouTube videos of the Ioniq 5N drag racing, and it'll blow your mind. Anyway.
I will check that out. I will check that out, and I will definitely not debate you as to what's going to be better in that regard. That's for sure. I
Okay,
know what
great.
lane to stay in that regard.
Back to the podcast.
Right.
I mean, you mentioned costs. Do you think technology is going to be able to help reduce both costs and environmental impact when it comes to things like logistics and warehousing?
I do. I do. I think that there's clear answers that automation does affect change in that regard as well. But it's scary to think about because there's a lot of implications to that. Automation reduces labor.
Mm,
There's no way around that. It creates efficiency. It reduces overall cost of storage. You can run it 24 hours. Machines aren't calling in sick. So I wonder about the overall effects. What we specifically do is more a hybrid. We do a lot of product movement. I love the product like AutoStore, right? And that's a ASRS. It's a great product. It's really sexy, really great to look at, super dense, and definitely for the right application saves money. There's a lot of applications that it might not save money for as well. So balancing the need to save money, the need to create sustainability because it is great for sustainability. Having that dense space means you're using less space, right? And
yeah,
there's
yeah.
almost nothing more dense than an ASRS. And there's so much benefit to that. So there is huge value there. But again, you're taking a facility that has potentially dozens, if not hundreds of employees, and you're reducing that dramatically. So there's challenges there too. But at the same time, I look at it and being in leadership and being a manager, and I was a manager back in my days at PricewaterhouseCoopers as well. uh, Human capital, it's working with people's oftentimes a huge challenge. Machines are not as much of a challenge. I think we are our own worst enemy in so many different ways. But when you look at the world today, even the ports in the US, I'm not sure if you're paying attention to it. The biggest negotiation stumbling block right now is the use of automation, the implementation of automation, because
Mm,
the workers know, the union knows if it comes down to it, they're going to be reduced. There's no other
yeah,
way around. It does create efficiencies. Now, that said, and this is why people like me have jobs. There's so many applications out there. I mean, we work with tons of 3PLs, right? 3PLs are our bread and butter. Everything from mom and pops that do 50 to 150 to $200 million a year, all the way up to the big guys that are doing billions, right? And
mm,
3PLs are a great example because it's one business, right? It's a business model, but there's so many different ways to do it. It's incredible at how many different opportunities there are and how many different business models and distribution models there are within all these different businesses. But take that even deeper, like let's just say auto parts, right? Or let's say, I mean, anything, cosmetics. And let's say it's a manufacturer that's doing their own distribution. And you could have five different manufacturers that are doing their own distribution. They're all doing it differently. So the
Yeah.
point I'm trying to make is someone like me or companies like mine, what we're doing is we're helping customers find the best type of automation for them. And some of the biggest challenges that they'll face is the wrong automation because you can spend millions of dollars only to 6 months, a year and a half later realize that you made the wrong choice. You made the wrong decision. And that's scary for the integrator and for the end user because the integrator, if they're helping them, find the right solutions, well, they're ultimately responsible for it, right? That's why I think consultants have a really great place in the industry. So you're doing a deep dive on data, but it also becomes scary for consultants. So finding the right automation and finding the right way to apply it, that's probably the most important part. But yeah, there's real opportunities for customers, end users, logistics professionals to save money and create efficiencies through automation.
Yeah. One data point on the automation and workforce losing jobs that I go back to, and I've forgotten the exact numbers, but I'll be in the right ballpark with it. The numbers are at the start of the 20th century, so the early 1900s, the amount of people who worked as the likes of farm laborers and in construction was around 30% of the labor force. And fast forward 100 years,
Sure.
it's less than 5%.
Yeah,
And most of that's through automation.
sure.
And we don't have hundreds of millions of unemployed farm laborers or construction workers walking around looking for jobs. More jobs have appeared in the meantime. So I
Yeah.
want to think that as we automate more jobs, again, similar things will happen. Maybe that's a bit naive of me, but that's
It's a really great point. I read an article yesterday and I've got real concerns about AI, right? And that's
Mm,
another topic that I know very little about, but we're learning. And when I say I know little about it, it's because it's so relatively new and there's so much to it. So I'm by no means an expert, but the article that I read yesterday is people are nervous that it's going to reduce jobs. This article really, and I can send it to you, but it talked about the fact that yes, it will certainly reduce some jobs, but there's opportunity for other jobs to be created based on it as well. So I mean, I think what you're saying is not naive. I don't believe it is. I think that there is opportunity and there's certainly potential out there for different types of jobs, but I do wonder what and how and when, and what it'll ultimately turn into.
yeah, I guess one of the challenges is A, for people who are older, it might be more difficult to change. And B, I guess the speed at which it's happening now versus the speed it happened 120 years ago, it's radically different. It's going to come much faster. But anyway,
Yeah.
we'll 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 keep going. What about things like access to data? Is that helping a lot in optimizing warehouse efficiency, sustainability? Are there any trends in that space we should be keeping an eye on?
So you'll probably hear me say in a lot of ways that I'm not 100% sure, simply because there's just so much information out there, right? And it changes day by day. The one thing I'm absolutely sure on is data is driving everything.
Yeah,
Data is absolutely driving everything. And you look at companies that appear to be technology companies in one way, shape, or form, or even they appear to be making money selling products. I mean, most of them are collecting data, selling data, using data. And for us, even with like our fast fetch and our IntelliPack, we run algorithms and we talk about AI and we talk about the fact that like our data, the data that we're collecting and is also being provided to us, helps us to create a better pick path, and it absolutely does. And
right.
if you look at it in the past, the way it was done, people would have a pick sheet and they'd go out and they'd be picking their items and they'd be bringing them back and running through the process. But with so many different products, including ours, although we acquired this company for a reason because we really believe in it. We believe in what the founders created and what they built because they're really, really smart guys. We're creating a better pick path. And that in and of itself is helping with sustainability and helping to create efficiencies within the facility.
Yeah, yeah, great. And what about packing itself? I mean, we've all had the experience of getting a parcel in the door from an Amazon or similar, where you've got this big box and you open it up and you've got this tiny thing inside,
Yeah.
massively wasteful of packing material and also space in the van.
Yeah. So, great points, and something that I talk about quite a bit because I got a big box. I had 2 or 3 items in it, and there was some dunnage in there, but it was mostly air. And I posted something. It was from Amazon, which I'm a big Amazon fan. I really am a huge fan. But I called them out a little bit and said, "Hey, I bet we can help you." I even bet them a little, threw a bet out there, and I said, "If we can't help you, we'll donate $10,000 to your favorite charity." Because we really believe in the product and we really believe that we can help. And not just Amazon. We believe that we can help anybody in this. And I haven't heard from them yet. But a lot of people were making good points. And listen, a lot of the points I knew, right? But marketing is marketing, and I'm getting the name out there as much as humanly possible. There's so many nuances to it, but packaging is a great place to think about sustainability. And so many times you'll see packages that might even have not even a lot of air because it's just so filled with dunnage. And think about
Mm,
this, right? Think about a distribution center, an Amazon distribution center, right? That has what, 40, 50, 60, 70 packers. Think about how many boxes they're packing in an hour.
mm,
Multiply that by an 8-hour day by the amount of packers they have. Multiply that times the week. And then multiply that by how many distribution centers they have.
mhm.
So
Yeah,
some of the points that people were bringing up to me, which were great points, is of course Amazon's got this covered, right? Amazon is the best in the world for a reason. But there are challenges. They have challenges, right? Oftentimes, they've got the cube wrong on the item that they're trying to pick or the items that they're trying to pack. So they're picking the wrong boxes for a different reason. But that's where we can come in, and that's where other companies can find that value because the cartonization and the cubing working well together, that's like peanut butter and jelly. It's very, very important to pick the right box. But think about it this way. One, in terms of efficiency, right? All these packers, if they've got 20, 25, 30 boxes to pick from, how long does it take to pick? How long does it take to pick the right box?
mm,
Could be a couple seconds, could be longer than that, right? But again, multiply that by how many packers, multiply that by how many hours of the day, and think about how many seconds, how many minutes, how many hours are actually being wasted picking the box. So the right software will help you pick the right box almost instantaneously. And it'll tell you just based on scanning the items that you're putting into the box. So huge right there, right? Fantastic right there. But on top of that, again, multiply all that by the fact that you've got all these boxes that are huge essentially for the item that you're using.
mm.
Think about how much corrugated you're saving.
Yeah,
What a dunnage. Think about how much dunnage then you're saving. And you brought it up as well. Great point, right? How many boxes can you fit in a truck or Amazon's using a lot of civilian vehicles, right? Other people do the same thing. Vans, there's all sorts of different modes of transportation. How many boxes can you fit if you're using the right box? So,
mm,
how many trips are you saving? How much gasoline are you saving? The cartization software is, to me, one of the greatest things that any company can implement, and it does balance, going back to what we were talking about before, right? It balances capitalism and sustainability
right.
because the ROI, it's not really that expensive. It's not. In fact, it's very inexpensive in the grand scheme of things, and we've got customers, big ones, that are saving upwards of 1,000,000 and $1.5 million a year. We've got other customers that are much smaller, that are saving tens of thousands to a couple hundred thousands. But the software itself and the implementation of it, again, depending on the size of the operation, is pretty inexpensive, and the ROI is there. So it's a great balance between sustainability and actually saving the planet, and or just reducing waste. You go by any landfill, go by. I was driving on the Garden State Parkway the other day, and I passed by just what appeared to be a leaf landfill, and it was the biggest mountain I've ever seen of leaves because the townships are picking up the leaves and they're bringing them to various different places to put them. I'm kinda curious as to what the answer is there. My guess is somebody with a lot more information about it than I do knows the answer, but why there's giant mountains of leaves out there, and leads me into thinking there's all sorts of different opportunities that we can find to save the planet and
Yeah.
just reduce space that we're using.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that brings me nicely into the whole topic of the circular economy, because if you think about it, in nature, there is no waste. So leaves fall out of the tree, they become food for something else.
Yep.
So in industry, we need to adopt similar principles. We need to think that, okay, what's now waste for me, no longer useful for me, surely that's useful for somebody else in some other kind of capacity. So is circular economics something that you guys are looking at as well?
Circular economics is not something that we're really looking at right now, certainly not in depth, but that's why I like conversations like this because there's nothing like collaboration. And being able to have conversations like this, I mean, the next thing I'm gonna do after getting off of this call is talk to my team and say, "Hey, we should be thinking like this too. And where can we find efficiencies and create uses for other items and for items that we're not necessarily using?" That's why I do love the used market for material handling equipment. And not
Mm,
to go off on a tangent, we did used for many, many years, and we were almost always new now. And that kind of comes from Amazon too, right? Because Amazon changed the culture, like I said earlier, of distribution and logistics, went from a cost center into being an opportunity center. And people went from trying to find the cheapest, most inexpensive way to store product to the best, most efficient, most cost effective way to run their distribution center, right?
yeah.
So you gain customers, you reduce costs, you move product faster. That in and of itself really changed the game. So when you go back to used, and again, I've got a love for the used market, but I wonder how much longer it's going to be relevant because, like I said also earlier, every logistics and distribution center is going to be different. Every model is going to be different. And there will be a need always for like, typical 18-foot, 24-foot, 42-inch deep pallet rack, right? 8-foot,
Mm,
12-foot beams that go with a standard pallet, whatever it might be. There'll always be the need for that. So in the used pallet rack world or the used shelving world, I think there's relevance for the very standardized sizes, right? So you're reusing that steel sometimes 3 and 4 and 5 times, which is great, right?
mhm,
But
yep.
but in the used conveyance and automation world, it's so different. The size of the boxes, the weight of the boxes, the rate that it needs to move, how many divert lines. There's so many nuances to every distribution center. What could have been a great business 10, 15 years ago, which would be used conveyance, tearing it down, storing it, then rebuilding it for a facility, it just might not be and really isn't today. And while it's great to reuse the equipment and save money, i- it's oftentimes, even in the terms of sustainability, creating more hardship and more difficulty to run that operation because it's just not the right way. Again, in terms of the circular economy, the circular environment, it's a lot to think about and how we can reuse things and work with existing products. But I don't have an exact answer for it right now, but it's certainly something to think about.
Okay, no worries. And what would be one, let's say, actionable tip for listeners that they can take away to make their warehouse operations more sustainable?
One actionable tip: keep your facility clean. And
Hmm,
it's so easy to do, but reducing clutter in your facility and again, I've been in this industry a long time, I grew up in it, right? But even as recently as 10, 15 years ago, and sometimes I see it today, rarely today, but it's out there. There's clutter everywhere, absolutely
right.
everywhere. But when you look at the different methodologies for efficiencies within a facility, the black belt type stuff, just hanging your equipment on the wall in the right place, putting your uh, machines in the right place, not having pallets laying around, not having broken pallets. There's a lot of very easy things you can do to keep your facility clean, and without question, it's going to help with sustainability.
Shifting course a little bit here, but running a company like ABCO must be intense. So how do you stay grounded, and what kind of hobbies do you have that keep you energized?
A little known fact about me is I'm a yoga teacher. I've been practicing yoga for 25 something years. In fact, I used to have 3 hot power vinyasa yoga studios,
Wow.
and I don't teach anymore. I don't, own the studios anymore. I sold them, about 10 years ago, which was a great situation for me. But regardless, I practice a lot of yoga. I do a lot in the world of fitness in terms of my own, health and mental health, and I like to take long drives. I find I think the US, and I haven't spent much time in Europe, but I think the US is just so incredibly beautiful, and the landscape, the mountains, the deserts, the oceans, I've never seen anything like it. Every time I go out into places unknown, I just lose myself in thought and just really enjoy
Fantastic.
myself. Yeah,
Yeah.
but you're not wrong. It can be intense. It's a lot of fires on a daily basis.
And if you like mountains and deserts and oceans, I'll have to get you to come to Spain sometime because we got plenty of those here and loads of room for driving as well. So that's
It's
that's next on your list. But
it is. It's on my bucket list for sure.
okay. And a left field question: if you could have any person or character, alive or dead, real or fictional, as a spokesperson for supply chain sustainability, who would they be and why?
Unquestionably Bruce Lee. Well, Bruce Lee, unbeknownst to many people, is a philosopher. And yes, a martial artist. And yes, fought against racism. And yes, opened the world to kung fu and buck the system, right? But but he's really a philosopher. And he's constantly thinking, was constantly thinking. I think the world would be an incredibly different place if he was alive today because his words were so powerful. When you think about supply chain, it's almost like anything you do in life, right? It's flow.
Yeah.
It's how you're moving product, it's how you're moving through anything. It's like when you wake up in the morning and your morning routine. It's like being on the road and driving through traffic. Everything is flow, right? Everything is how it moves around, how you're working with the environment around you. And Bruce Lee was an absolute master of understanding the flow of the universe and understanding the flow of the physical form and really just free thinking. And he was all about finding thoughts, being actionable on those thoughts and making change, living a life worth being remembered. Unquestionably Bruce Lee.
Fantastic. Seth, we're coming towards the end of the podcast now. Is there any question I did not ask that you wish I did, or any aspect of this we haven't touched on that you think it's important for people to be aware of?
No, I think I would say, I mean, I think this was a wide-ranging conversation. I probably went off on a couple tangents, in fact. It's the best kind of conversation, right? But I think really what I'd like everybody to think about as much as possible is we have so little time on this planet. And if you think about the history of the planet as a whole, again, zooming out massively, we're not going to be here forever. And the planet's going to outlast us dramatically, right? We have so little time here. The best thing that we can do is create what little change we have, what we can do, what little change we can affect. And I know for myself, it's the small things and knowing that I'm doing something better every day and working with people and trying to be the nicest person I can and polite and considerate. That to me makes my life better. And that in turn makes the people around me happier because energy begets energy type of thing. And that in turn does affect the world around us. So while I believe that the world will go on for millions of years without us, while we're here, taking care of it is so important. And let's be here as long as we can, and let's live the best life that we possibly can. And taking care of the planet is a huge part of that.
Fantastic. Great. Seth, that's been really interesting. If people would like to know more about yourself or any of the things we discussed in the podcast today, where would you have me direct them?
They can go to abcosystems.com and they can find us on LinkedIn as well. My name is Seth Weisberg, of course. They can find me on LinkedIn and ABCO Systems. And of course, they can look up Fast Fetch by ABCO Systems as well.
Great. I'll put those links in the show notes anyway, Seth, so everyone will have access to them. So great.
Great. Awesome. Tom, it was a real pleasure. Again, grateful to be here. Really enjoyed talking with you.
No, thanks so much for coming on, Seth. It's been great.
Have a great day.